the gospel of the Lord. Good morning. Before I begin, I just want to clarify something. If you were wondering what Deacon Phil was doing behind Scott, as Scott was singing the antiphon there, Phil was trying to be nice to me because my legs are not doing well. He wasn't dancing, he wasn't doing this and that. He was asking me if I could pick up the book and walk over here, which I did. So I wanted to clarify that my brother was not dancing and making fun of Scott singing. I do that when the camera's not on. Our third week in ordinary time, as we spoke a couple months ago, we were entering year B under St. Mark. And St. Mark, if we remember, has the shortest gospel. He was a disciple of Peter, and so he writes everything clear and concise. And so when he hears Peter say that he came and cured his mother, it's the first thing he put in. And I thought to myself, how wise Jesus was. For anyone who's ever been married knows, once you win the mother-in-law, you win the family. And so Christ won the family. He brought Simon and his brothers in, and from that moment on, they followed Christ. But before we can get to that part, we have to back up and look at Job. It struck me. I had to read it over and over again while preparing for this homily. Is not man's life on earth a drudgery? And he ends it with, I shall not see happiness again. And what do we say? Well, thanks be to God. And I'm thinking, why? Why are we saying that? Doesn't that sound wrong? And then you go on and you're hearing the psalm, responsorial psalm that Scott sang. And it says to us, it says, he heals the brokenhearted, he binds up their wounds, he tells the number of stars, he calls each by name. He sustains the lowly, the wicked he casts to the ground. See, each one of us can relate to the psalmist and to Job. Now, we relate to Job in different ways. Some of us have very minor illnesses, very minor things that come in our way, and we get, all right, Lord, let's go. Can we get on with this? Can we move on? And then there's times that life throws us really bad curves. Some he's given cancer, he hasn't given cancer, but they have gotten cancer. Some have been in bad accidents. Some have come through many difficult times. Good friends are killed or die. And we always cry out, why, Lord, why? Why me? And it's something that each of us sometimes can get angry about, sometimes lost about, and sometimes we just don't know why it happened. And then we get into Paul here, and Paul's going to give us the secret to this, because Paul starts telling us, unless I get lowly, unless I die to myself, I cannot be strong. For it is in preaching the gospel, in his weakness, that he becomes stronger. Paul always talks about carrying his cross, and carrying his cross that Christ gave him. And when there were times in his life that Paul said, Lord, I just can't go on, and the Lord said to him, my grace is good enough. Each of us need to hear that voice inside of us as we're talking. Each of us need to understand the difference between faith and hope. We hope because we've run out of ideas on how it could be. Oh, a miracle has to happen. Oh, a miracle needs this. Or I'll never be able to come over this. Faith tells me if I'm in Christ's hands, then I will be saved. I once was in a parish where we were doing healing masses. And a fellow deacon came up and said, we can't call them healing masses. People are going to come with the hope of losing their cancer or losing this or losing that. And when they leave and they still die, we have let them down. And I did that little tilt thing that I always do when I went, And what does that mean? It means, why are you saying that? Why are you putting God's miracle in a box? What does miracle mean to us? Does it mean automatically a physical cure? Could it not be a spiritual cure? Could it not be a mental cure? Could it be all three cures? We're not God. We don't have that formula. We don't have the ability to say, heal. We don't. We have to say, through the power of Christ. Through the power of Christ. Paul says he doesn't preach his own gospel. Paul many times will say, I'm not the gospel of Paul or Cephas or anybody else. It's the gospel of Christ. Now let's move on to the gospel that Mark tells us. What does Mark tell us? He first calls the disciples in. He then goes to, last week we went to a synagogue where he expelled the demon. On Monday, this past Monday, we heard that there was a demon inside of a man called Legion because there were so many. And Christ kept going to different places. But on this occasion here, he shows that Christ is not just for the outsiders, but he's for everyone, family members, as well as our neighbors, as well as people who don't even know who or what Christ is. And we have to remember that. Now, Christ is told right there by the disciples who said, Lord, everyone's looking for you. He could have easily set up tent and had people come in and did all that curing. He could have easily done that, but that wasn't his purpose. That is not my purpose. I have become all things to save at this some time, Paul writes. And then when we come to Jesus, Jesus said, he told them, let us go to a nearby village that I may preach there also. For this purpose I have come. We have to remember that we have to bring Christ to people. It's not only the people who come to church. It's not only the Christians of this world. There are many people crying out like Job did and the psalmist did and like we do. Now, Jesus does give us the answer to all of it even before that. Or I should say the gospel gives us the answer. And what's that? He went away to pray. He went away to excluded place. Do you know if you go through every one of Jesus' miracles, they'll say he came from prayer. For Jesus made himself one with the Father and performed the miracles that were asked of him. And if you remember one thing, there was only one place that Jesus could not and did not perform miracles, and that was in Galilee where he was, or Nazareth, I should say, his hometown. And why? Because they didn't have the faith. Which takes me right back to the beginning of this gospel, the beginning of this homily. Hope doesn't get it done. Faith gets it done. When we are at our weakest point, we are at our strongest point. Because we have to let the world's resources go. We have to let all those things that hold us back, that the world tells us if you do A, B will come, C will follow, and D. And when it doesn't happen that way, we're lost. It doesn't follow the way the world told me. It doesn't seem fair. Instead, let us dig deep inside, die into ourselves, becoming one with Christ, and through prayer, see the miracles happen in this world, in our lives, to our families' lives, and for all who need. God bless you, and may we stay in prayer together this week for the miracles that have to happen. God bless you.